underscore no display, it shuts it off. Don't forget to press escape. It's still selected, as you can see by the ribbon. So the Prospector tab is categorized into the different object types that you can have inside your drawing. So for instance, if I wanted to see what center lines I have in the drawing, I can expand this and I have all these center line alignments inside the file. One of the other things that's really cool about the Prospector tab, or the Settings tab for that matter, is that it does show you these nice little icons inside the Prospector tab that tell you something. So this icon on the bottom left part of the name that shows a little arrow is telling me it's a data reference from some other drawing. If I click on the surfaces collection, you'll see it's coming from this location here. All right. And that's the other cool thing about it. This icon right here, this orange triangle, is telling you it's being used by something in the drawing. So if I were to right click on that entity and try and delete it, you'll notice there's no delete option because it's being used by something. This is the corridor surface, and it's being used by the alignments and profiles and everything else. Now, that doesn't mean you can't delete it. What you can do if you want to do that is simply select it, and then what I would do is press delete on the keyboard or erase, and it would delete that. Now, I'm not going to do that because obviously this is my actual design. So the Prospector tab contains all of the entities inside your drawing, and then this category right here, let's minus this one, is the project location. These are the available data shortcuts that I can bring into this file. To do so, we would simply select it and drag it. I already have it in here, so I'll press escape, but that's how you bring it in. It doesn't live in this file. It simply is available for you to use for modeling, to look at it in a profile view, etc. And that's how this is categorized. Let's talk about the Settings tab of the Toolspace. The Settings tab, as the name implies, is there for settings and styles. There are 3 levels of settings in the world of Civil 3D. You have drawing settings, feature settings, and command settings. The settings are all hierarchical, and what I mean by that is drawing is at the top of the list, then comes feature, and then comes command, and they can all be overridden depending on the level that they're at. So the drawing settings are simply here. If you right click on the top part of the drawing name here, this is the drawing settings. The drawing settings contain, as the name implies, drawing specific settings. So they start at the top of the list here. So the settings start here and then will proliferate throughout the additional settings, but you can override the settings above. So the feature settings can override the drawing settings and the command settings can override both. So as you can see here, you define the coordinates, you can do things for transformation, you define what layers entities should go on when you create them. You can define the geometric abbreviations, such as the beginning of an alignment, such as the end of the alignment, so PC, PT, etc. And of course, you have these ambient settings, which work for things like what decimal place do you want to see for elevations or for coordinates, etc. Notice this arrow over here. This is telling you it's being overridden somewhere down the line by the other settings. It could be a feature setting or it could be a command setting. So feature settings are specific to the feature or the object type. In other words, a surface or an alignment or a profile view. So if I right click on the feature itself, I can go to the feature settings. Notice how this looks just like the ambient settings, except it has these additional categories specific to the feature. So if I want to set the default style for a surface when I create it, I would do it right here. Notice how this too is being overridden somewhere down the line by a command setting, which we'll get into in a second here. But as you can see, you can change, for instance, let's say for a surface, I want to see 3 decimal places. Well, as soon as I do that, notice how this toggles on and it tells you, hey, I'm overriding the drawing setting. All right, that's how this works. Let's cancel out of that. Then the last setting, which overrides all settings, is the command settings. So if I expand down to the command, these are the true commands for the surface type. So if I typed in add surface contours, ADDSURF, this actually would then start the command here. Now, of course, you're not going to do that. You're going to find the command that you pick in the interface because the commands are rather large. So if I want to override a specific command from the feature setting or the drawing setting, what I do is I right-click on the command and go to the command settings here. You'll notice there are some additional icons right here which are specific to the command. So if I look at the surface creation, here's where I can tell it what the default name template is. But if I want to override this specific command style, I can by simply clicking on it over here and choosing a different style to use to override the ones above. You'll now notice this is now overriding the feature setting. And that's kind of how this works. Let's press cancel here. So as far as the styles and other things that are used by Civil 3D entities, you want to understand them. There are two types of styles. You have object styles. For instance, this surface is using an object style called Contours Major 5 Minor 1. Nothing magical happened. I created that style. So that style is there for me to use. However, if I want to see something different about the components within that object type, for instance, let's say I want to see this thing, how it flows. I have one here called company_arrows. Well, what that does is it shuts off the contours of the entity surface and turns on other things such as the surface arrows and the border. Right? So this is a really nice option because it lets me see my surface to make sure that everything is draining properly. That's a really awesome feature of Civil 3D is, again, this is a dynamic modeling system. So the style is controlling how this entity gets displayed. So if I change it back to contours, 5 and 1, it is now showing the contours. Okay? So that's an object style. Now, a label style is the other type of style that is used by Civil 3D. So this labeling of these contours is being controlled by this label line group here, this surface contour label group. If I go to the properties palette, these are the label styles that are being used, proposed major and proposed minor. Okay, and so this is how it's controlling the way this looks. It's the same thing for any entity within Civil 3D. For instance, this alignment. It says PT station whatever, and then I have these ticks and this major station and these minor stations. These are label styles. Because this is a group of labels, you will see this is an alignment station label group. Okay. However, if I wanted to label, let's say, the surface elevation at a specific location, I could select the surface, go to the contextual ribbon and pick the spot elevations. And then I'll just zoom in and click here. This is the elevation at this location. Now, of course, again, the cool thing about Civil 3D is it's a dynamic modeling system. If I move this label around, you will see the elevation changes automatically. If I copy regular AutoCAD copy command, and if I copy this label around, it will update to show the elevation of that location. Now, because this is an individual label, I can select it, and this is just one label that I would be editing compared to this one here, which is a group label because it's specific to the group of the alignment. Just like this one here is specific to the group of the labeling of the contours. If I wanted to change an object or a label style, you have to think about how you would do it. It's not that hard. It's organized very nicely. So for instance, let's say I wanted to change this surface style. There are a couple ways to do it. You could simply select it, and then when you right-click in space, you get a context-sensitive menu. However, if you wanted to know where that actual surface style is, you simply expand the surface category, and here are your surface styles. This shortcut right here is telling you it's being used somewhere in the drawing or with another setting somewhere else. So I would simply right-click on here and choose Edit, and this is the Object Style dialog box. This will be different for an alignment, for a profile, per a profile view, etc. So as you can see, I can turn on and off different components of the object itself. For instance, I could turn the triangles on for this one,